We are calling, welcome to the planning board meeting of Thursday, June 11th, 2006. Can I ask everybody to please silence your phones? I'll cover this. Let's start with roll call.
Member Brown,
Here.
Member Bobby,
Present.
Member Powell, Member David, or Vice Chairperson David, sorry. Member Mendelson,
Present.
Chairperson Rosen,
Here.
and Member Axelrod is not present. Thank you.
Is he okay? With that, let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there a call for a motion to accept the agenda as presented today?
I move that we accept the agenda as presented.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. For those giving testimony, please stand and raise your hands to be sworn in and provide testimony for the application you are affiliated with. Ms. DeHart, please swear in those giving testimony.
By the authority vested in me as a notary of the state of Florida, do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
The minutes from last month's meeting, are there any corrections to the minutes for the May 14th, 2026 meeting? If not, may I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move we approve the minutes.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Let's move on. New business. The first item is development order application number PZ 26-6-SPX. This is an application by Eileen Gonzalez, Greasy Permits LLC, requesting a special exception to install a 24,000-pound capacity boat lift for the property located at 4304 Intracoastal Drive. Does any board member have any ex-parte communications to disclose? Hearing now, none. I now open the public hearing. And will the town planner, Ms. Allen, please present the application?
All right, good morning. Ingrid Allen, Town Planner. As usual, we'll go ahead and start with the aerials for the subject property. This starts on page 12 of your packets. So here we have the property at 4304 Intracoastal Drive. And here you have the rear of the property. You can see that it's a single lift. As indicated by the chair, this is a special exception request to install a 24,000-pound capacity elevator boat lift. Now, on the applicant's application, you'll see that they indicate that they're moving a 10,000-pound capacity boat lift. I do provide on the bottom of page 8 of your packets that on May 12th, the planning board approved a special exception to install a 4,000-pound capacity elevator boat lift. So I'm not quite sure what happened there. I will say that the 4,000-pound capacity boat lift, the footprint was 8 feet by 8 feet. When you look on the survey for this property, for these plans, the 11 by 17, the existing boat lift is 8 feet by 9, so it's just a little bit further landward. Again, it's a different property owner back in 2022. I advised them this discrepancy. The applicant did receive FDP approval. When you look at that FDP permit, it says a separate authorization from our not required. I provided the permit number on page 9 packets. Now there was a small discrepancy in the plans that were submitted to FDP and the plans that were submitted to the town. The town plan showed a lift that is north about 2 feet. So we always want to make sure the plans submitted to FDP and submitted to the town, that everything matches up. So there was correspondence in your packet, starting on page 14, you can see the applicant reached out via email to let them know, hey, our boat lift is 2 feet north, you're good with that. They corresponded that that's fine, doesn't impact their permit. So let's go ahead and take a look at the plans, then we follow along with 11 by 17. Here you have the survey, here's that existing lift right there. And here you have the proposed conditions. So, you can see that the applicant providing here the 25-foot marine side setback. This property is zoned residence RS, so according to the code, you have to have 25-foot marine side setback unless your lot width is 50 to 70 feet, then it's 15%. And here on sheet number 4, you can see that the height of the lift is 6 feet from the dock. They're compliant with the maximum height of the boat lift that we have in our code. I've also provided on page 9 of your packets the boat lift definition oops. Oh, sorry, went too far ahead. Oh, wait a second. I'm going wrong. Oh, sorry. Something happened with this. Go back. Yeah. There we go. Yeah, I wanted to just mention this note right here. Yeah, the applicant did not provide, didn't superimpose the actual boat. I always note the staff report, it's not a requirement of the code, but it's always have the applicant just put in that they'll be lines with that boat lift definition, just so that it's on the same page. We do have the authorized agent here, Eileen Gonzalez, and I'm happy to address questions that you have.
So at this point, does any board member have a question for Ms. Allen? Not hearing anything, does the applicant or any representative of the applicant's proposal have a statement to make? Okay. Are there any questions from the board for the applicant? Not hearing any. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment on this application? Ma'am? Hold on a minute. You have to stand up and come over to the microphone. Jackie, was she here to be sworn in?
Yeah, you have to be sworn in for public.
Hold on a minute. We have to swear you in.
Why not?
So raise your right hand. By the authority vested in me as a notary of the state of Florida, do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
So we ask that you provide your name and address and advise that you have 3 minutes.
Sure.
So,
My name is Rose Amataro. I've been living in this condominium, which is 4324 South Ocean Boulevard, since 1980, when I bought it. So you could imagine how long this has been. I've been part of the community, of course, but now I retired. So I'm going to be spending more time on concentration of my property. Because what's happening is that the expenses are way too high for me as a 80-year-old to keep up with. So I am going to be doing what they've done. And that is, the question is pertaining to this situation, because I only have 3 minutes. Is this pertaining to all the houses there? Mine is only 2 houses away from that, 4324 South Ocean. Okay, so eventually, when we do sell, the part that's on the water, is that going to apply? Because that was a triplex and it was also an association. Now it's going to be 2, correct? Am I understanding this correct?
Yeah, I
I
don't-
think that's a different property.
No, this is the property that's going up on the corner.
That's not this one. It's the next one.
We're at a different,
We're on a different, you're asking questions about the next one that's coming up.
4304. Okay, I'm gonna look at this property, but the property that I was talking about, and it doesn't necessarily pertain to that particular, but
Right.
it is the same problem. It's a threeplex, now it's a twoplex, it's still being built. What happens to the waterway? Do they separate it in half? Can I do the same thing with mine? So I have already put a call into a lawyer that does associations, because I think this is an association, but no?
this one is a.
How?
This
does
is
it-
a home.
It's a single family.
This is a single family home. I think the one you're referring to is the next item on the
That's right.
agenda.
The next one, the one that's at the, that an investor bought.
So I'm going to ask that you defer your comments and actually you'll get another 3 minutes. So let us,
Thank you.
all right?
I appreciate it. My first meeting here, so.
We
I'm
welcome you.
Just a starter.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
By the way, I met Natasha.
Excellent.
She's wonderful.
Do we have any questions from the board at this point?
Okay, can I sit?
Yes, ma'am.
If the answer is no, the public hearing is now closed. And can we call the roll, please?
Need a motion,
Yes, make a motion.
Madam Chair.
I move we approve development order application number PZ 26 6 SPEX.
Second,
All in favor? Aye. Do we have to go person by person? Sorry,
Yeah, we usually call the roll on development application.
individual.
Vice Chair David,
Yes.
Member Mendelson,
yes.
Member Brown,
Yes.
Member Bobby,
Yes.
Member Powell,
Yes.
Chairperson Rosen.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next item.
It's your turn.
Development order number PZ 26 5 SPSS. This is an application by Tully Pappas, Randall Stoff Architects, requesting site plan approval for a new 2-story, 5,636 square foot, single-family residence with a pool and spa for the property located at 4301 Tranquility Drive. Do any board member have any ex parte communications to disclose? If not, I now open the public hearing. Town Planner Allen, please present the application.
Right, good morning once again. We'll go ahead and start off with the aerials for this property. These are provided in your packet. Here we have, this is a corner lot. Here you have the front of the property. This is along Tranquility Drive. And here you have the side north lot. This is along Belita. And just to recap, this is a request for a site plan approval to construct a new 2-story, 5,636 square foot, single-family residence. This is with a pool and spa. The project includes 6 bedrooms and 6 baths, as well as 2 car garages. And according to the property appraiser, this existing home was built in 1982. So we'll go ahead and take a look at the 11 by 17 plans. So here you have the site plan. I know the details are a little bit hard to see on the screen, but here you have the pool and spa. Obviously, this is the actual residence here. On the floor plan, you're able to see a little bit more of the detail. Here on the north side, you have the 2-car garage. Here's the 1-car garage. There's also a bedroom here, the kitchen. This is the second floor. I've gone ahead and put a red circle over the additional 5 bedrooms here. This is a rendering. The front rendering is here on the top. So this is how the home will look aesthetically. And this is how the rear of the home will look. And here you have the elevation. So here you have the front elevation. followed by the side elevation, the south side. This is the rear elevation on top, and then the south-north side elevation on the north on the bottom. Okay, this is the tree disposition plan. As you can see, there's a little table there on the top left. I put a little red bracket around it. You can see that they're removing 11 palms. Okay, none of these are designated specimen. And then when you go to their landscape plan, which is right here, you go to the next page, they have their planting schedule, and they've gone ahead and indicated that they're going to add 9 new trees and 16 palms. Now, let's continue on. We have irrigation plan. This is the irrigation plan. And we have a landscape lighting plan as well. That's it. Now, I did talk a little bit about on page 58 of your packets about this side corner. Actually, let me back up and go to the site plan. Oops. To show you that area. So right here is that side corner yard. And when you're on a corner, obviously you have to comply. And when you look at the code, it says that the side corner yard has to match the setback of the front. So the front setback is 25 feet. So you have 25 feet right here as well. That's pretty much it for this particular request. We do have the applicant's authorized agent here, Tali Pappas, and I'll be glad to address any questions as well.
Okay. Does any board member have a question for Ms. Allen?
Is the existing home 25 feet setback on the side?
I'd have to check on the survey. Let me look at it. Nope, there's plenty of homes in the town that may be, you know, non-conforming, but I have to check the survey.
Because the property across the street that this lady over here was referencing, the triplex that went to a duplex, they got some sort of a variance because they were on the road. So their setback was reduced. So I just I don't know what the difference is between that and the house directly across from
They
it.
got a variance. They're excluded. We have a code provision about the side yard setback. And when you read it, there's an exception. And I believe that property was an exception to it.
Yeah, because somehow that setback one actually covered the road also, went into the road.
I'll have to look back at that, but if I remember correctly,
Yeah.
actually, if you look at the definition of side yard, you see how it says?
It was some sort of a
block
setback difference.
16, block it. These are the exceptions, and that property was one of the exceptions, so they didn't have to have side yard corner setback. Now, looking at the survey that's in your 11 by 17, let's see. If I can
Yeah,
figure
it is 25
It
feet.
is 25 feet.
Mhm.
Thank you.
2510, 2513.
Well, I, for one, being a neighbor, I'm happy to get this rat infested home built.
Okay. Does any other board member have any questions for Ms. Allen? That being said, if the applicant would like to make a presentation, now is your chance. Hearing none. If there are any members of the public who would like to comment on this application, please come to the podium, provide your name and address, and you have 3 minutes to speak on this application only. It's you. No,
You know, I've got a
you have to come up.
little.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
You still have to give your name and address
Yeah.
again, though.
Okay, thank you. I got this letter from the board here to come in today, but I was thinking of the wrong property. I didn't know that you were gonna be talking about all the other properties. This property is the one that I'm interested in, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the question is still the same. Does this apply to all the houses that are on that block? In other words,
Does what apply?
where I live, it's 2 houses away from this one. So I have waterway too.
Right.
And so the dock is not that big. It's only 60 feet, but they bought the whole thing, they threw them down, the 3 apartments that were there. There was an association for 3 apartments there. So is it allowed to go down on the association to 2? Because it's allowed?
Can you speak up so we can get it into the record, Roger?
It was mandated because of the zoning that they were only allowed to put 2 units on that location rather than 3. So the 3 was grandfathered in, but once they tore it down, they could only put 2.
That's so important to me, what you just told me, because I have to make my own decisions now at this point, whether to sell the whole building together or 2 apartments.
Do you own the whole building?
Yes, I did. I gave 2 to my kids, 2. So I own the other 2. I own the association. I can make changes to the association. So what you said about grandpa.
I don't know if your property is
Yeah.
the same as the other property, but that
Right.
property size, the square footage of the footprint,
That's
they
right.
they can only put up 2 units according to the current codes.
We always had 4 units.
Yeah, but you may only be able to put
Ma'am.
3 or 2, you don't know.
Yeah.
Builder,
Yeah,
I think you
this
should
is not,
ask-
right?
Yeah, you need to go to Ingrid and look
exactly.
at your
Thank you.
property and see whether if
Try to-
you sold it and ripped it down, the new person could only have 2 or could still have 3 or 4. But she's the one that could tell you, not in this meeting.
This is
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
a density issue.
Yeah.
So I meet with residents all the time that are interested in possibly selling the
Yeah.
property to see what you can
Yes.
get. So by all means, you
I will
can meet
talk
with
to you.
me. You
Yeah.
can call the building department
Sure.
and we could set up an.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank
Much
you.
appreciated. Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that have a
Nothing
comment?
else.
With that, the public hearing is now closed. Okay. I refer this item,
Motion,
I thought, to Mr. Remus.
motion.
Okay.
No,
Is
yeah,
there a
we,
motion to recommend approval of this plan?
So
I
moved.
yeah, it's a final approval for this item. I think you're looking at the other one or they messed something, but yeah, this is just an approval.
Okay,
Second,
I say.
Mr. Hart, will you take the vote?
Vice Chairperson David,
yes,
Member Powell,
Yes.
Member Brown,
Yes.
Member Bobby,
Yes.
Member Mendelson,
Yes.
Chairperson Rosen.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
All right, with that, we are moving on to item 8, unfinished business. We're going to try and go in order on this, gentlemen, if we can. The first item is the proposed ordinance regarding the encroachment of a hard surface beyond the property line in order to provide access to a seawall dock or abutting intracoastal waterway.
Madam Chair, do you want to follow the agenda? The agenda, we're going to do the dune.
Follow the agenda.
Oh, well, then the dune protection is first. We're still on 7C. Yeah.
You got me. Sorry.
You're good.
All right. I'm sorry? Yeah. What was in the other one? All right. We have proposed, we're up to the proposed ordinance for coastal dune protection. Amendments to section 6-127, chapter 6, section 3083 of chapter 30 Code of Ordinance, and requests for the planning board to make a recommendation to the town commission. Building official, Mr. Remus. It's all yours.
Okay. Board, Jeff Ramus, building official, town of Highland Beach. And this is something that came up. Just give you a little history. I'm going to go over it. I have a presentation for you, but I'll just give you a little item here. What happened was we found something in the code of ordinances that prohibits some lots from being buildable whatsoever. And unfortunately, this was hidden in a section that was specifically for seawalls. So if someone was building something brand new on the ocean, but not doing a seawall because FDP either wouldn't approve it or we had no reason to look there. So we found this and then found out that it was a primary section that applied regardless. We conferred with town council to make sure. And I'll go over the rest of that with you right now. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to fix this, hopefully expedite this so that we could make these lots now buildable to where they're technically right now, they are not buildable because again, you'll see, let me get this up and running here with the presentation. Not even see, my screen is completely dark here. I don't know what I'm looking at. Could you see the button? Here's the presentation button. You can't see. It's the button slideshow. Up there, it's hid behind that. Oh, there it is. There it is. Okay, there it is. Now it pops up. Okay. So the town commission has directed staff and town council to develop an ordinance that reconciles two conflicting sections of our town code. One of them is in the structural component under building, and the other one was in zoning for development. So we found a conflict because the more restrictive one supersedes the less restrictive one. And that's what we're trying to fix here. And what we're asking you to do is kind of review what was proposed, evaluate it, make sure it's good with applicable land use regulations, and then issue a formal recommendation to the commission. Okay. Right now, we have a dune system, and that's for storm surge, that's the town's primary defense that's subject to both ordinance sections. So this and FDEP, because, and I'm going to talk about, explain what the coastal construction control line is in a second. What's happening is homes are being allowed to be built in to the dune, and that's no longer going to be allowed on many properties because of this town code that was discovered. And you have to literally be in 120 feet from the eastward side of that vegetation line before you can even go below 18 feet above sea level, which makes many of these properties unbuildable. And again, I'm going to show you that because now we actually have some properties where the coastal construction control line has been moved so far to the west that even part of the right of way is east of the coastal construction control line, creating the problem. When they do this, they will recently try to go below base flood elevation. And when they do that, they have to put in breakaway walls, or they're supposed to put in breakaway walls. And what happens with the breakaway walls is you've already compromised the dune, and now the breakaway wall does its job so that the water can flow directly out onto A1A. So now storm surge will push out onto A1A. So we're trying to balance making these homes buildable and these lots buildable. So right now, under the building section in chapter 6, there's an absolute prohibition, no construction east of the coastal construction control line. And it says in no event, there's no variance, there's no exception. So for all of these properties that are mostly or all, or even in some cases partially east of the coastal construction control line, you can't do anything. There's a 120-foot Ocean Ridge protection zone where no excavation is allowed below 18 feet NAVD without a seawall first. And this section, this building section, overrides any other chapter in the town code, and it specifically says that. And this is the section that the building department must apply during the building permit stage, and it blocks what FDEP has approved, and we're trying to remove that restriction. Now, chapter 30 in zoning, it has the same beginning. It'll say protection of Ocean Ridge, and it's framed as a zoning level removal prohibition. It's more about what you can take out of the dune, but there's no absolute CCCL prohibition. It just refers to FDEP, which is consistent with the FDEP coastal construction requirements. So this is part of the, part of the issue. Now, this is located in a zoning chapter where the applicants and design professionals normally look for development standards. So they see this and they will design to it, not knowing that the other section actually exists. Like we didn't know that the other section exists. And it already has language that in the planning and zoning that defers this to DEP, and that would basically solve the problem, okay? When you look at this, if you can see this photo here, the orange line that's very far to the west is actually the coastal construction control line. So all of these properties that you see here, including part of the right-of-way, is actually east of the coastal construction control line, and therefore it would make every single one of these lots completely unbuildable, which is our problem.
Is that the coastal construction line?
Right, so I'm gonna go over that. What happened is, in 1979, they came out with the original coastal construction control line. And the town had this town code in place, and it made sense. What happened was, in 1997, FDEP moved the coastal construction control line very far to the west. And when they moved it to the west, they never updated that portion of the town code. And it's been sitting dormant like that since, 1997. So that's what created the problem where we have unbuildable lots. So right now, if we don't amend the code, people will apply, they'll have FDEP approval because it's east of the coastal construction control line. We'll look at it for engineering, setback, and dune assessment. They'll have a valid coastal construction control line permit issued by DEP. They'll send it to the town, and then under the unamended code, we have to reject it, even though they have DEP approval. We want to fix that. Under the proposed one, there's going to be a valid, if they have a valid permit and it conforms with the DEP is going to issue the permit, they're going to give it to us, and then we're going to look at it to make sure that it still applies with zoning setbacks and other requirements that we have, including the building and planning. Okay. And that's what we're trying to do here. So under this proposed framework, FDEP approval is like the governing standard while preserving the town's role as a compliance verifier, right, on planning, zoning. And the problem we're having here is FDEP field review is conducted by individual reviewers who experience is variable. And we've seen that, where we've had issues where we called FDEP and say, all right, you sure you meant to approve this? And then it turns into a conversation. People get moved around into departments. And we have documented instances where material was removed from the Ocean Ridge during construction that, in my opinion, was questionable. They said, oh, we have contaminated soil. So I said, oh, what did you find? Diesel fuel? What was in the contaminated soil? PCBs? And he says, oh, no, there was some vegetation and some tree roots. So then that was allowed. So triaxle after triaxle after triaxle of dump trucks removed earth from the Ocean Ridge. Anyway, so what we do is we're gonna confirm the conditions that FDEP, we're gonna kind of question it, make sure that it's good. FDEP does have very specific requirements that are just standard cut and paste things that are in there. And then we still have to follow the Florida Building Code. We still have to follow the FEMA rules because we participate in a national flood insurance program. There are still well over 2,000 flood insurance premiums, flood insurance policies in place in the town of Highland Beach. And we still have to look at everything else. So sometimes what FDEP approves may not meet all of our requirements, such as planning and zoning and other things under the building code and under FEMA. Okay. And we want to fix this problem because of basically, and I'm not going to take Len's component here, but legal exposure to the town. Everyone always hears Bert Harris, you know, the town is making things more restrictive. We want to take that away. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically consolidate all of these Ocean Ridge standards into chapter 30, which is what you see in the proposed ordinance, which is the proposed code amendment via ordinance. The CCCL permit from FDEP is still the operative standard. And in the past, we required a seawall if they wanted to go and exceed some of the requirements that we have that made these lots unbuildable. And one of the reasons why we have a problem is unless you have an existing structure that is in imminent danger of failure, FDEP will not allow you to build a seawall on the ocean. And since I've been here, I've only had one installed, and that was in front of 6 units because they were getting erosion and they were going to lose their pools and their back patios and so on and so forth. So that was allowed to go in. I've had conversations with the man in charge of FDEP who oversees the reviewers, question him. They are changing what they call their armoring standards for how they're allowed, but they're not changing anything to allow people to basically put a seawall in, which would have kind of fixed these problems. And in speaking with one of the contractors who does build a lot in town, he said, boy, if they were allowed to do that, he goes, their homeowners would love that. Unfortunately, FDEP won't allow it. Unless, again, it's an existing structure. So a little bit of loss of common sense. I do have to actually make a bit of a change here because under here it says the minimum lowest floor at base flood elevation. It replaces the 18-foot that's mandated by that section. And we're reducing it all the way down to base flood elevation, which is 12 or 13 feet, sometimes 11 to 13 feet. But the Florida Building Code, since the last 3 completed homes on the ocean, they were able to put their garages at base flood elevation. Right now, since 2023, you're not allowed to go below design flood elevation, which is your base flood elevation plus 1 foot of what we call freeboard. All right. So I am incorrect, and I have to actually ask Len, based on your conversation here, to amend the word base flood elevation and change it to design flood elevation to be consistent with the minimum standards under the Florida Building Code. So under the current town code, we have problems with the 120-foot Ocean Ridge protection zone, which makes these lots unbuildable. The minimum floor elevation of 18 feet. Again, it's great for the dune protection, but it's not good for development. And there's an absolute prohibition of being east of the coastal construction control line. And if you want to get around some of those, you have to put the seawall in, which you're not allowed to do. And we mandate that you put the seawall in before I can even issue you a permit. So it would really slow things down. This is, again, one of the reasons why we have to fix this. And there's absolutely no administrative relief on this. So what we're looking to do is let FDEP, their CCCL permit govern the construction, set the minimum floor elevation to design flood elevation, and I'm going to explain why, because we kind of don't have a choice. And then take that CCCL prohibition that we have, and again, defer back to FDEP. And the only time that we would require a seawall would be we wouldn't. It would be only if DEP required a seawall. Maybe they change their rules in the future So if FDEP requires a seawall, then of course, we're gonna reconcile chapter 6 and 30. And the FDEP will basically be the relief mechanism to make this happy. Now, this proposed code amendment is consistent with SB 180. If you're familiar with Senate Bill 180, we have a kind of a moratorium until I think it's August of 2027, where we cannot change any ordinances to make them more restrictive. In every single instance here, we're removing the 120-foot rule, making that less restrictive. We're removing the 18-foot rule, replacing that with DFE, design flood elevation. That again is a reduction because the DFE is lower. The absolute construction east is being removed. That's less restrictive. And us having a mandatory seawall is being removed because FDEP won't allow it. So that also is more restrictive. So we're basically pulling out all the stops. And that's it. So there's really no direct fiscal impact for the town itself on this. It was prepared by the town council. I did check with some engineers on a few other items to make sure that everything was looking, I guess, they wouldn't use the word copacetic anymore. And that's it. So we're just recommending adoption of the proposed code amendment. And just so you know, I also checked with Ingrid on this because this is consistent with our comprehensive plan under future land use objectives, infrastructure element, drainage, and coastal conservation elements for preserving dunes. So we're reducing restrictions, making lots buildable that previously were not buildable, and still have things in place along with FDEP to allow things to move forward. And I think that's it on that. But does anyone have any questions about this so far? I'm sure there's gonna be a million.
Yeah. I first want to ask Greg about his memo because he said he has to leave in 3 minutes.
No, I'm here till 10.
Oh, you're till 10:50. Okay, then I won't ask. But I would like to know if this presentation changed anything in your memo.
So I'll ask him a question on that.
Okay.
Garages. You didn't have garages in your language, and that's what people are putting below grade. Are you making anything more restrictive with the now proposed changes you're planning on making for garages? Do garages have to be much higher now at base flood elevation than they normally did?
No, we're taking it to where they can't build below 18 feet NAVD with 120 feet. And we're allowing them to put the garage all the way down to design flood elevation. So like, for example, the 4513, the 2 units that were built at the south, they were built prior to 2023 when there was a change that went from base flood elevation to design flood elevation. And they were both put in at base flood elevation to the garage. So they were good. They were good to go. The one up on the north end, the very large one, they actually complied because they have such a large lot. They were able to comply with every component with the 120-foot rule and everything else.
Yeah.
Right. The bigger problem starts to happen as we start going south in the town of Highland Beach. You can still put your garages into the dune. No one's saying houses have to be up on stilts. What we're saying is you cannot go any lower than design flood elevation. And I need to clarify a point here. One of the reasons why I want to have design flood elevation, or the main reason that I want to have design flood elevation in this section in chapter 30, because this is where the designers, the architects and engineers go before they design something for someone. They see what the rules and regulations are, they see what the setbacks are, and they make that design. Right now, under FEMA's rules, the National Flood Insurance Program, and the Florida Building Code, you cannot build that garage below design flood elevation into the dune at all. And even some other rules with the coastal construction control line through FDEP, because you cannot build below base flood elevation or design flood elevation, because when you do now, since 2023 under the Florida Building Code, you have to create a breakaway wall. And that breakaway wall has to, by code, by law, break away when waves hit it at 20 pounds per square foot. When you put them
together.
into grade and you have all of that, what's called unbalanced backfill against them, that will put anywhere from 80 to 110 pounds per square foot against that. So now you're actually creating
Bigger risk.
a retaining wall, right? So you're creating a retaining wall, which cannot be a breakaway wall. So you can't do both, you know, and when I spoke with one of the coastal engineers who helped literally build the FEMA maps and is one of the most respected engineers, you know, and I was trying to see if there was a way around some of this. He said, you know, the maximum pressure for this wall to break away is 20 PSI. He goes, even with 6 feet of backfill, you're already up to 80 pounds per square foot, not PSI. You're already up to 80. He goes, Jeff, 80 is more than 20. He goes, like, this is not even an issue. So whether or not you elect to put the design flood elevation and recommend to put that in the ordinance change for, okay, we still can't approve it anyway. We just can't approve anything that goes below design flood elevation anymore, because that forces them to put in a breakaway wall, and you can't, it's conflicting. You can't have a breakaway wall, you know, that's also a retaining wall and structural. So the two conflict, and it's an impossibility.
So there are a lot of breakaway walls in homes in Highland Beach. Why haven't they all broken away then, based on what you just said?
Because they're not really breakaway walls. Because things were, I'll be honest with you, it was kind of the Wild West here.
Really?
It used to be the wild, up until about 7 or 8 years ago, when Marshall got here, it was like the Wild West. And they're not breaking away because they're not breakaway walls.
So
And
they're
they're
not
designed,
being-
yeah,
okay, good.
they're designed to actually break into components. The other
Right.
component is they have used CMU, right? Concrete blocks.
Yeah.
They're not allowed to be grouted. And here's the other thing. When you're in a wind zone that is above 150 miles an hour, you're not allowed to use CMU walls
Right.
for breakaway walls. We're in a 170 mile an hour wind zone for single family homes on the ocean. So they can't even use them. So if we just keep them at building at design flood elevation for the garage, which shouldn't be an issue. I found homes that were built 20 years ago with garages, you know, go up the driveway, boom, and they're currently they're at the design flood elevation now, and they were built 20 years ago. And this is on the south end. So it can be done. It's a design issue. It's completely a design issue. There's ways to design your homes to make it work. If people are concerned about, well, my driveway is going to be too steep, you can put it at an angle. You can offset the garage back and then cantilever out the home over the top so you don't lose any livable space. Okay? It's a design issue, but it's what's safer for the community because we can't allow them to build like that at all.
So
All right, so
I'll answer your question because I know
Yes.
you asked the question.
Right.
So the answer is no. This does not address it. So I talked to some engineers about this. And that's where I got this is a solution in search of a problem. There is no municipality in all of South Florida that does anything but the state codes. There's no municipality that's having any problems with breakaway walls.
And the state, do you mean FDEP and, yeah,
Both the state and FDB.
okay,
Because they both have a say in this.
okay.
And we would be the only town now raising this up where they can't have garages.
I'm a little, but wait 1 second, I just need to ask you one thing, and you too. If this ordinance was in effect since 1997, interfering with the other section 30 code, what have we done for 30, 40 years? I mean, so why would we do this now and not just go with the state and the FDP?
It was neglected
Okay, but
for all the years because it was never updated. And
it
there
was
there they didn't have good enforcement. And that's just the reality of it. There was a third-party inspection agency that was we never had a full-time town planner here. We never had a town planner.
I remember all that.
You know, and all these
But-
things. And it was neglected. Even if you elect not, the reason why I want that in there is that the designers see it, because what we don't want to have happen is that They look at the code, they look at chapter 30, they look at everywhere else they have to design something. And then they come in for a building permit and we say, you can't do that. And now our residents we're trying to protect here have to pay to have this redesigned. That's why I want to put it there. I want to put it there basically for more transparency
Okay.
because other towns just don't allow it, but they don't put it in their
Okay,
zoning code.
Why wouldn't we just amend chapter 30 and say, please see this other thing when doing your thing, and then they would know, and it wouldn't have to be redesigned twice, and you wouldn't have to go through this whole thing. I don't,
This is what I'm trying to do.
That's
Like, we're removing
No,
the
you-
overriding section 6.
okay.
I don't know if Len could jump in on this one.
I would leave, okay, what I'm asking you is, can you just leave it the way it is and amend section 30 to tell them to please make sure and look at section 6? So that they know all of our issues, and then it would just be the way it's been for 30 years, yes?
No, because section
No?
6 really doesn't, well, section 6 is totally it doesn't comply with existing state regulations because you can go, east of the CCCL as long as you get your DEP permit. I think what Jeff's trying to say is the design flood elevation, which is you're going to now, that's already in the floodplain regulations, but that's in a separate chapter. So it really has nothing to do with chapter 6. We kind of rectified the chapter 6 issue. We sort of just took it out of there, put it in here. But he wants it in chapter 30 to know that you can't go below design flood without then cross-referencing the floodplain regulations, which everybody pretty much has the same one because FEMA mandated them.
Right.
And that's what if I understand Jeff correctly, that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I'm trying to be as transparent so that that homeowners aren't paying to have something redesigned because they get through planning and zoning and then come to building and find out that under the floodplain, you cannot build a breakaway wall below base flood below grade and have it function as a breakaway wall and have it function as a retaining wall at the same time. The physics are impossible.
So,
So, right, but the issue is other towns and cities, they don't do what I'm asking to do, but they also don't allow the way people have built here in the past, years ago.
and that's, just so I understand, if we referred, I'm sorry, Jeff, if we referred to the FEMA requirements in this ordinance, does that solve, I think, what Greg is asking and what Jeff kind of wants to accomplish? I think what we're hearing is sort of a plain language request. So I don't object, Jeff, at all to what you're trying to do. So my question is, we're deleting the inappropriate part of chapter 6.
Correct.
Okay, we're referring to it in chapter 30, but Jeff is assuming, and I think correctly, that any designer would look at the FEMA regulations no matter what. So they would be subject to it. I think what we perhaps are leading towards is it's great for designers, but it may not be for potential owners. So do we set up sort of an orange light, if you will, in that statute that says we have to defer, or any owner, builder, designer also has to defer to relevant FEMA regulations? Because it's quite possible going forward, right, that FEMA could change their rules. Am I missing something, Jeff?
Any entity could change the rules at any time.
Exactly.
Right. This particular code is also in the Florida Building Code.
Okay.
Right. And the Florida Building Code refers to another standard called ASCE 24.
Okay.
Okay. And then in there, it's even more restrictive than the FEMA's rules on breakaway walls. Right.
Okay.
FEMA never intended, they don't have one single reference. They don't have one single document in their technical bulletin number 9, they have nothing that shows any pictorial, any design, or any discussion that shows breakaway walls below grade, because it's an impossibility.
Okay, so I think what I'm hearing, what I'm asking, and Len, you're probably the expert on this. Is there a way to reword this to basically recognize the relevant other standards and then leave ourselves a loophole that says, and in the event that any of these standards change, so that it becomes, I'll give you my analogy. Is it like the building code? So if you start to build something with the building code in 2026 and the building code changes in 2027, you're grandfathered in, correct? In other words, you don't have to amend what you're planning to do based on the new requirements in 27. I think what I'm asking is, can we do something akin to that, Len, so that it's clear, or at least relatively clear in the beginning, that when you start to build, this is the rule, these are the rules, design level, all of the other requirements that are in the relevant statutes, and then have sort of the catch-all subject to any future amendments or changes?
Well, it's always subject to future amendments and changes, but
Understand that.
I think if the board would rather, and I don't know how Jeff feels about this. I mean, for lowest floor, we could just reference the lowest floor, shall be comply with all provisions of, and we can reference the floodplain regulations and the Florida Building Code and just leave it at that
FDP.
without specifically saying design flood elevation. Of course, it's sort of the same thing, but we can just cross-reference those regulations if that would be better for the board.
What I'm hearing is, if we do that, it doesn't sound like we're out of line with anybody else.
Yeah, I'll just.
Is that, Greg, am I sort of getting it or not?
I think we're getting, well, most of this comes around to the breakaway walls and the garages, right? So 90% of what Jeff's talking about, moving the coastal control line, all that stuff, like totally agree, all that has to get changed, all makes sense. The issue that's still not 100% fully clear to me on this is Jeff has something against breakaway walls. I understand. No one else in the rest of South Florida does. And I'm talking engineers, I'm not talking homeowners and stuff like that. So my only point is we should not be forcing new homes to raise their garage levels to unnecessary levels because Jeff has a problem with breakaway walls and they're not a problem anywhere else with any other municipality. So I just want to make sure that's.
I'm going to let Jeff, I don't think he's really saying that, but I do want to give him the chance
Of course.
to.
Yeah, maybe I'm misunderstanding.
Okay, thank you. These are the rules and regulations. It's not just my interpretation. It's the interpretation in the Florida Building Code, the way it's written. It's in the FEMA regulations and the FEMA technical bulletins, in the TBs that they have specifically on breakaway walls, where they can be constructed, how they can be constructed, the different methods that they can be constructed. Unfortunately, there's no way to construct them in the way that they're doing. So just because someone has done it in the past doesn't mean it was right. And we had enough of an issue with things not being properly enforced, which is creating these issues, that we're just trying to, again, what I'm going to tell you is, regardless of what's in the ordinance, when someone applies for a new permit, once they get the building review and the floodplain review, they will never, ever get a permit issued if that basement, it's not technically not a basement, if that garage storage floor is below design flood elevation, because I can't legally do it. We can't just approve it because it's been customary in the past. So the reason why I wanted to put design flood elevation, because the design flood elevation always moves. As FEMA comes out with new firm maps, they change the base flood elevation. As the base flood elevation changes, it changes the design flood elevation. So it's a moving, it's always moving, so that it's always being updated, just like we did the same thing with the seawall heights. We went to base flood elevation, not design, because seawalls aren't part of the floodplain ordinance.
So Jeff, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
Yeah, yeah.
Len, I think where I'm suggesting is rather than have it specific to design level or using that language, are there codes that we could list A, B, C under there that have to be part of the compliance, which would meet your need?
You don't have to put anything.
Yeah, you do.
Well,
Well,
but
it's already.
the easiest thing to put is the actual design flood elevation, so that now when they're designing, they know what it has to be at.
I get that.
Yeah, And it makes it
completely
easier.
Get that, but.
I'm not the one spending the money to redesign it when it gets rejected.
I have a
Chair,
question.
I'm sorry,
I have another question. Len, can we
Yes.
just delete this thing that was added in 1979 that conflicts with our other code and everybody else's code? Just delete it and say that it was amended as recently as 2020, which is beyond me. But
agree.
just get rid of it. And then if there's some clarification you want to do to the only one that's left that the designers and the homeowners have to look at, then we should put it in there. Because this thing about, I saw your chart, why we shouldn't just say that it's according to what FDEP says and we should go through our own. I just don't see that. It's so convoluted.
I think we've let this issue sort of, I think everything else is pretty straightforward. You know, we're really deferring to FDP. We're taking out our prohibition about the CCCL. We're taking out the seawall requirement because that conflicts with FDP. I think it's just this one section. So when we talk about basements, we just say basements shall be permitted subject to all applicable Florida Building Code requirements and floodplain regulations. I guess we could do the same thing for lowest floor, Jeff, I don't know if you would have objection to that, but.
It depends, because the lowest livable floor absolutely has to be above DFE, above the design flood.
Understood,
elevation.
but that's pursuant to the floodplain regulations, correct?
Correct.
So if we just cross-reference them the same way we did for basements, if we just say something like the lowest floor of all the buildings, and the final grade, whatever, shall comply with all provisions of the Florida Building Code and the floodplain regulations, is it the same thing? I'm just trying to move forward.
And why wouldn't we just get rid of the conflicting statute?
Well, we did, we removed all that language from chapter 6 and we just wanted,
Remove chapter 6?
well, no, we removed all the conflicting stuff from chapter 6 and we left the stuff that should be there about building. But I guess that's my question, Jeff, is, would you be amenable to, I know why you want the design flood elevation there. I personally think it makes sense. But wouldn't it have the same net effect if we just cross-reference the building code and the floodplain requirements?
Yes, and then they just have to check with us before they make a design to verify, because the problem is that it comes down to there's one engineer who is the same one who submits things the same way. And I've spoken with the county, I've spoken with Delray Beach, I've spoken with Boca, I've spoken with multiple others, I've spoken with FEMA on this, I spoke with our FEMA representative who helps us rewrite the ordinance and then get it approved by FEMA. And I spoke one of the top, he doesn't work for FEMA, but he's one of the top, formerly used to FEMA engineers about the situation. And the reason why, again, the only reason why I'm trying to do this is that if it's just design flood elevation, which it's going to have to be anyway, it's that it's right up front when they design so that they don't have to design, because then they're going to think, well, I know that this guy will probably try to do this and he'll send me, he'll design a breakaway wall. And it can't happen.
But to rewrite a whole thing for one guy who doesn't like to follow what he's supposed to follow, I mean,
Then don't. That's
I mean,
fine.
it makes no sense to me.
Len, why can't we just do what every other town does?
Right.
Every other town just says, look at the state, look at FEMA, and it works
Right.
for them. Why can't we do that? Like
that's
this rewrite, we're doing all this extra garbly gook.
and that's essentially what I was saying. But I think, just to reference the lower floor or whatever, here we're just talking about the dune. So it's very specific. These are your dune protection
And
regulations.
only in a flood zone. And there are parts of the dune that aren't in the flood zone.
Right,
It's
and they're-
only
that's right, it wouldn't
if you're in
apply.
the VE zone. If you're in an A zone, an AO zone, you're in an X500 zone, none of this applies. This is solely for VE zones that require breakaway walls when you're below design flood elevation. But all this with breakaway was originally designed for houses on stilts, like in the
stilts,
Keys
right.
and on the West Coast. That's what this whole thing was for. And then at some point, someone along, said, hey, we can, and you had poor enforcement and you ended up getting it. Now people think it's normal and it's not.
Right, because it was designed so the water could flow through if, that first story would just break away and the stilts would hold the structure.
Without affecting it, right?
I understand.
With this in mind and subject to this discussion, Len, can we take another swipe at the statute?
Can we take another
Ordinance.
swipe at this? I mean, I could revise it sort of how I just,
Sort of what we just.
we can
talked
just
about.
cross-reference again if the board's not comfortable with design flood elevation being incorporated here.
Get
We-
rid of it.
We'll
Just
just,
get there, Jeff.
Then we can-
If we
yeah.
enumerate the various reasons, you still get there.
well, yeah, in Jeff's defense, I think Jeff was just trying to make it easier up front. So when people go to design according to the zoning code, they understand what the requirement is. It doesn't matter because they're still going to have to comply with the same requirements. So we can just cross-reference the regulations if that's what the board's.
My point is, I understand that Jeff is working, to accommodate those that look at design and engineers. I think though, if the layperson or future buyer wants to look at it, it might help to have it a little differently, perhaps.
In my opinion, it'd be more complicated because now they're going to have to go
I-
digging somewhere.
Right.
And that may well be, Jeff, but
Yeah.
at the same point, if it's enumerated, you're not caught in the crosswinds of somebody that objects to your language.
That's perfectly fine.
You're,
Yeah. We
even
just
when you
don't want them
speak
to
to
go.
me,
Yeah.
even when you speak to me in plain English, at least this
Yeah.
would be there. Len, I just think it may be a different course to accommodate, because I think Jeff's points are extraordinarily well taken and I think are important to comply with. And I think what we're trying to get to is language that makes it clear both to designers as well and engineers, as well as to potential acquirers of property who are going to do this. Is that really what we're getting to?
Yeah, I mean, it's working very well in every other town in South Florida.
Okay.
Right, to refer to just the state, and
Yeah.
I don't understand why we're doing anything different. Anything different we do or we add in is just making it more complicated. And we keep getting caught up in these little.
In the
things again and
right.
again.
Jeff, it seems to me, and I personally agree with you, that you don't want to have to deal with a homeowner coming in and saying, I paid the architect to do this, and now you're telling him he can't, and now it's going to cost me more because he has to.
Exactly.
Because it's
Okay.
not going to get approved below design flood elevation anyway.
Why not
You
just
can't.
say that?
That's what I'm trying to do.
That's.
And I think.
That's all I'm trying to do.
I think you're almost there, Len and Jeff. I just think the one addition, and to your point, Eileen, it has to be very clear that section 6 has been amended to delete its inconsistent requirement.
And that's already taken care of. I
Everything.
think we're just down to whether this board's recommendation is to reference the design flood elevation or not. So I think that's really what we're down to. I mean, I think everything else everybody's fine with. It's just whether in this section, we reference design flood elevation, or in this section, we do the same thing as sort of we did for basements and say, well, you got to comply with floodplain, you got to comply with the building code. Everyone does. It's going to end up in the same net result because Jeff's telling you can't go below design flood elevation regardless. So it's just how you want to present it. So, and again, it's the recommendation of the commission.
Right.
The commission really wanted this fast track due to the legal implications that Jeff sort of referenced. And I guess we do have people waiting for permits to clarify this.
Yeah.
So my suggestion would be that if it's the board recommendation that, okay, you recommend approval And if the majority of the board wants that taken out and just referencing the standards, then we'll present that to the commission. I mean, ultimately, it's the commission's decision how they want to proceed.
Right. I just think that if you have designers who can't, once we take out the conflicting part of section 6, and it says you go to FEMA and FDEP and floodplain regulations, if they can't figure it out, then it's tough. You know, they come to you and you say no, and you go, but it said the floodplain, and you know what that means. It's tough. Like, it's just tough. Like,
And if I may, the reality of it is, and this is, I've been doing this for a really, really long time. Architects and engineers often don't want to be the bad guy, so they will often design what the customer wants and let the building department, let planning and zoning be the bad guy.
wow.
This is what happens, and I'm just trying to stop. But that's fine. It doesn't matter, you know. And I don't have anything against breakaway walls whatsoever. So I kind of take exception to your what I will call an accusation. I think it's inappropriate, Greg Bobby, but I don't have an issue. I think there's a place for breakaway walls. You can't legally put them in the way that they have historically in the past in some instances, and certainly not in the future. So we're just trying to stop that and but that's fine. It doesn't have to even be in there. But at one point, they're going to get, they're going to get stopped.
Okay.
So are there any more comments from the board? So now the question is there a motion to approve this proposal either in its existing language or subject to the modification to, I'll call it, elaborate on the separate provisions?
Right, for lowest
Make
floor.
that recommendation to the commission?
I'll try a motion.
Try a vote, because that's not.
Let's go.
I'm
I'm
my
waiting
motion.
on you.
Yeah, okay.
I make a motion to approve all of the non-conflicting issues that we had, with the exception of anything related to design flood elevation. And in that situation, we're just going to reference FEMA and state.
Before we go there, are there any comments from the
Yes,
public?
Sorry.
Thank you. Has he been sworn in, Jack?
It doesn't need to be for that. This is ordinance. It's
Got
not-
it.
It's not an application.
My name is Joe Demaro. I own a company, a building company, in South Florida, and I'm listening to, the issues about elevations and floodplain. And the question I have for Jeff is, I think FEMA and Florida Building Code in their regulations allow garages and vertical access below that Florida of the design flood elevation. Isn't that correct?
It is correct, but in a VE zone, everything changes because you have to have a breakaway wall.
Okay,
And
but-
in addition to that, and I wouldn't even discuss this, but since you're asking and you're opening up the door, in addition, FDEP has the Coastal Construction Control Line 100-year elevation line, their flood line, which for all of Palm Beach County, including obviously all of Highland Beach, is 15.4 feet NGVD, which is the equivalent of 13.9 feet NAVD. And they would require that if you were going to go below that level, even building above grade, that you have to have a breakaway wall. So that's even more restrictive than FEMA. But you're talking about a VE zone. We're not talking about a
VE zone would be
floodplain,
an
AO
ocean
zone, an
property.
AE zone. We're not talking about over here where we do it all day long. We approve stuff out on Bellito Island and on the west side where they always put the garage below, almost always put the garage below base flood elevation. You have flood vents, you have all these things. But as soon as you do that in a VE zone, it mandates the breakaway walls.
Okay, what's wrong with breakaway walls? They're designed by an architect and engineer. They're meeting all codes.
That they're not
So-
meeting all codes.
They're designed by an architect or engineer.
That
Is
doesn't mean that
correct?
they're right.
Who determines if they're right or wrong?
Another engineer.
Okay, an
myself.
engineer does it,
Or
you,
the-
you go on what the engineer says, because they're the expert in that field. And if they design something, are you gonna question a design by an architect or engineer, by an engineer?
We do, every single day we do that and we
But
send
if
out
it's
plan
designed
review
by
letters every
code,
single
You
day.
can't do anything about it. I'm sorry. Okay, but if it's,
the issue that.
but if it's designed to code by an engineer.
But it's not the code. It's just a design that someone wants.
Yeah, but it's designed by an engineer. He's licensed.
So
in the
anything an
state of
engineer-
Florida to design. That's what we hire him to do.
It doesn't work like
I
that.
have to tell you, I'm sorry, but I would go with our building department and not some engineer someplace else who's designing what a person wants. And they will play fast and loose every time.
I'll take the opposite because an engineer is licensed, stamps it, and has liability if they're wrong.
Correct.
But so does our
Receiving their
building
rounds.
department has to be consistent.
Is there some like independent, like if he brings you something that he says is stamped by an engineer and you say, I think it's totally wrong, is there some independent person that you can go say, like, he says this and he says this and what's your opinion? Could we like put someone like that on a?
Well, we do that every single day.
Oh, we do?
Every structural design that comes in here, I send to another structural engineer for a peer review. And 100% of the time, they have comments and the structural engineer has to make changes.
That's fair.
Because
That's good,
we
but if
all,
it's accepted, then
right,
it's
and that's
accepted.
and that's exactly what we do.
Okay, so that's.
So it's not an issue. We already sent it to another structural engineer for a peer review.
So then, for sure, I wouldn't have problems, and nobody should, if that guy comes in and says, well, now it's going to cost him more to redesign. Well, that's his problem.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
That's his problem. Isn't that what the town's supposed to do? I mean, like,
You can't, right, and engineers are not allowed, they also have limitations of what they're allowed. They can't design a house out of matchbooks and say, this is, I stamped it, so it's good. I've been around the block with this way too many times. I've been an expert witness. It's
okay. I mean,
it's not, it's just, we're trying to protect the town. We're trying to get in a CRS program with FEMA so we can lower flood insurance premiums here.
Is this required in order to do that?
It's not required. Yeah, it is because we have to meet the minimum standards. We
Okay.
have to enforce the minimum standards in order to do that.
So my question then, less for you than for Len, is does the wording as proposed today meet that requirement? And if we clarify it sort of in the method that Len just mentioned, that wouldn't change that compliance issue?
No, the standards are the standards are the standards. I think the issue is, Jeff sort of wants to put it up front just because he feels like that's a service to
To the,
current and future town residents who are designing structures on the ocean front. So if they know up front, they won't have these issues of having to go back and redesign. And then the other issue is, well, why are we doing that? Because that's already required by floodplain, by building code. And that's what we follow, and that's statewide, and we all follow the same standards. It's just a wording issue. So so the recommendation of the board, Mr. Bobby did make a motion there. I don't believe there's been a second yet, but his stance is, well, we should just, rely on those other regulations and not include the design.
Was that your motion? I second that.
correct.
All right.
Yeah, all I was bringing up was that FEMA and Florida Building Code does allow garages and vertical access below the design flood elevation. And they're allowing the breakaway walls, and every municipality down the whole state of Florida on the ocean is allowing it to be done. But now you have
So
a municipality that's questioning why everybody
okay,
else is
so
doing it.
you're
but they
saying
don't want to
like
do it.
they're bringing you breakaway walls that aren't compliant. That's what you're saying, right? They don't really, they're
They
really
don't
not.
really break away because
So they don't really break away. So the answer is you should kick back everyone where it is required to do a breakaway wall that he just said. And in your opinion and your expert's opinion, it doesn't break away, and let him, and just say no. You gotta go back and
That's-
do a proper
that's fine
breakaway
with me.
wall. Yeah.
That's perfectly fine with me.
A point of clarification. So Jeff, when you said that all the all the plans come in and you send them out for peer review, you get another engineer involved. And there are often discrepancies or notes or feedback. How often is that feedback because of a misrepresentation or an incorrect design versus how often is that feedback because it's not meeting the standard or code?
I don't have a breakdown of that, but what I could tell you is 100% of the time, there are deficiencies found where they either didn't provide a calculation, they are referencing the wrong standard, they put an undersized piece of rebar in that has to be changed. It's just a small design change. But 100% of the time when architects and engineers submit, there's always, especially engineering, because we send it to a structural engineer. I don't send stuff to an architect, but we send stuff to an engineer. Because everyone's a human and humans make mistakes, which is why we do a peer
I guess my
review.
point is that upon submission, they're not representing that they're installing a breakaway wall that really won't, and they've designed a breakaway wall that really won't.
No, it won't.
They just
Right.
design it.
Right.
They design it. Here's what the wall. Here's how we're going to build
Right.
it. It's missing the standard, but they're not representing. They're not misrepresenting that it is a breakaway when it's not.
When you have a code, a standard requirement that a wall break away at a minimum of 10,
Mhm.
but a maximum of 10 or 20 PSF, but it's being used as a retaining wall with
No, I understand.
Right.
I understand.
retaining 80, it can't break away.
No, I understand that, but my question is more centered around, you have a licensed person that's stamping a drawing saying, this is the wall that I've designed and this is how it works. But are they also saying, and it's a breakaway, or they're just saying, this is what I designed? And the problem you're trying to solve is that they're designing them not to be breakaway because you can't build the house that way. And then they have to go back and redesign things.
But yeah, but they're filling out what's called a VE design certificate, a V-zone specifically stating that it meets the requirements of ASCE 24 and a breakaway when it clearly is not. When the standard, when ASCE 24 and the FEMA TB9
Mhm.
clearly state that you're not allowed to grout the walls, but they know they have to grout them. Otherwise, all that sand, all that unbalanced backfill is going to collapse in.
Well, then I would view that to be more on the engineer's responsibility
Right.
rather than
Correct.
ours.
And but if they just know up front that they can't go below design flood elevation, that means they don't have to design a breakaway wall and that whole issue goes away and people don't have to have things redesigned. But
then
it
you
doesn't
take
matter.
away
Either way, we have to do our job.
Yeah,
We all
but
have to do our
you
job.
take away their ability, okay? You take away their choice because you're going to put the design, and that means they'll never have to have the breakaway wall. So you don't have to deal with that, and no one does, okay? But you take away their choice to go below the design if they do the breakaway wall. And so let them do it. They bring you the breakaway wall. You'll say it doesn't comply, it won't break away, and you'll have a guy say that. And guess what? 2-3 times it gets around in the community, they'll know that there's no more in Highland Beach where you can just say whatever you want and that's what it is. And they need the breakaway wall if they're going below design level.
Yeah, that's
Okay?
fine.
I mean,
But-
That's fine. I'm trying to be good for the community so they don't have to
Right.
redesign.
Well,
things. That's fine.
You know,
That's fine.
I agree with Jeff, and I don't really care what other places do. Because if our building department says it doesn't work here, it doesn't work here. And they could do it any place else because you don't know who their building department is. And I trust Jeff to keep this town safe and not create issues because there are issues. Every time a permit doesn't get approved, every time some people have screaming fits. And why do we have to deal with it? If you let them know up front, this is what you need to do as a minimum, fine, that's what you need to do.
Again,
I mean,
took
I
away
don't care
their
what
ri-
they do someplace else,
You-
to be honest.
you took
I'll take the
away
opposite-
their
I'm sorry.
choice to like do it differently.
Well, but you know what? There are a lot of things in other towns that they take away choices where you've got to paint a garage door a certain color, or you have to have X number of trees. And there are a lot of things that choices are taken away. This, to me, is a safety issue, not an aesthetic issue.
Reject it if it's not safe.
But that's the whole point. People don't want to get rejections. So if you let them know up front what they can expect, it makes it a lot simpler and smoother process for everyone.
I just-
Chair, I'll take the exact opposite side of all of that. This is one building official, good building official, but one building official. It's working in every other town. There's going to be a fair amount of liability for Highland Beach related to this. So I would just simply match the state requirements like other towns are doing.
At a minimum, and I'm not quite sure, listening to your wording that we got there, the section 6 language needs to be deleted. Do we?
Anything
agree?
related
Yeah, he was
to,
just talking about,
I'm just trying to make sure I understand.
oh, yeah, no, I could try to restate it. I mean, I believe the motion was to approve the ordinance as drafted with the exception of the reference to the design flood elevation where we would just default to the state,
Default to
the
the state.
floodplain regulations and the state building code, the statewide standard.
correct. If
And I
other
seconded that, yeah.
So that's-
municipalities are allowing garages and stairs below design flood elevation or base flood elevation, we shouldn't be restricting it. We
With
should
the
just be referring
proper,
to the state.
with, if it requires a breakaway wall, then it's with the
Right.
proper regulation.
As long as they meet the prop, the
The
code,
prop-
as
right.
long as you meet the code.
Right.
Right, either way,
And- and get it, reviewed by a design professional of our choice.
okay. I think I think you're done with your public
Thank you
comment.
very much.
We're just trying to be, so, yeah, so there was that's my understanding of the motion. You want to take out and just default to the state standards.
Right, and I second.
And it was the second, so we're going to have to vote on the motion unless there's more discussion. I don't want to cut you off.
Okay. Member Bobby,
Yes.
Member Mendelson,
Yes.
Member Powell,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson David.
No, actually, I'd like to leave in the design floodplain in.
That's perfectly fine.
Chairperson Rosen,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, we'll present that to commission. Thank you.
All right.
I like some good debate early in the morning.
We're approaching lunch.
Yeah, so Mr. Bobby has to go.
Mr. Bobby has to go with that. I don't know that we have
And
enough.
then I thought, well, we still have a 1, 2, 3, 4.
Do we have quorum?
We still have a quorum, but I believe the purpose of bringing back the hardscape was because we wanted Mr. Brown's input, but then Mr. Brown
And
So
Roger. Yes, so.
want to continue that
let's
again.
table that proposed
Okay,
ordinance.
if we could have a motion, we didn't need a motion to continue it to the next.
We need a
meeting.
motion.
I'll make a motion to continue it to the next meeting.
second,
Second, all.
Yes.
Mr. Hart,
Yes.
that okay?
That's fine.
Okay.
You're free.
With that, we're to announcements. June 16th will be the town commission's special meeting. And July 9th is the next planning board regular meeting. Can I get a motion to adjourn? This panel is adjourned
so
at
moved.
10:58 a.m. Thank you.